my sobriety work that I've done personally is something that I really felt was like an eye opener to me. And I remember somebody saying to me, good evening, good evening. Happy Sunday to everybody. I hope everyone's having a great weekend. I'm just gonna get my pal. Those of you that don't know me, hi, I'm Ellen. I am founder of Sobriety Sisterhood. I am an addictions and recovery coach and lifestyle coach as well. And here comes Sarah. The wrong way around. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are
Good.
you?
Yeah,
I
I'm
just see
good.
myself in the screen.
I was like, what is she?
I don't know why it does that. I've got to switch the camera around when I first turn it on.
Okay. I can't hear you very well, actually. I don't know whether your
Oh,
mic is like, or whether I'm just deaf, which is quite a possibility too. Anyway, how's your week, Sarah? How's it been?
great, thanks.
Or 2 weeks actually, since we did a
Yeah.
live.
So half term in the middle, and
Yes.
then which was great.
Yeah.
Didn't last long enough.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good. Everything's all right with you. Sobriety still rocking.
sobriety's still rocking.
Fantastic. So today we're going to talk about like I think it's one of our favourite subjects actually in sobriety, isn't it?
Definitely.
Certainly one of my favourite subjects is core values, which we have mentioned over and over again in the lives that we've done so far. So today we're going to delve a little bit further into core values and what they mean to us in sobriety. So for those that have never heard of core values, and I had never really heard of core values. I mean, a little bit kind of, yeah, maybe touched on it a little bit before sobriety, but something in my sobriety work that I've done personally is something that I really felt was like an eye opener to me. And I remember somebody saying to me that they really are our leading light in how we live our life. And it's a conversation I wish somebody had had with me when I was a teenager, for sure. And then again as I've moved through adulthood, and it's a conversation I have with my kids, and it's definitely a conversation I have with my clients and the groups. It's one of those things we've talked about, the idea of being a dry drunk and like not doing the work, simply removing alcohol. This is part of the work that I think it really takes to reinforce why we give up alcohol, the life that we want to lead alcohol free, and compare what did life look like according to our values when we were drinking, what does life look like according to our values now that we are sober. Can we live a life that's more aligned? We've also touched on like that, so low self-esteem is one of the elements of addiction, and for me, when we're not living aligned with our core values, that's when our self-esteem really dips, because we're doing something even though we know that we don't really want to do it. So Sarah, I'm going to ask first of all, if I put you on the spot and say, what are your top 3 core values, Sarah? What would you say to me? Which is a question I ask kind of clients to think about all the time, right?
Yeah. Compassion, integrity, and honesty.
Okay, talk me through those 3 things first of all. What do they mean to you?
So I think compassion, be kind, do it with kindness. Obviously, that's compassion in a nutshell. And I think I've always had that. I think even though I didn't know what core values were either
Yeah.
until I started this journey. So integrity, I've never had integrity when I was drinking. That wasn't conscious or deliberate, of course. But I couldn't trust myself
Okay, so tell me what does integrity mean to you?
to do the right thing,
Okay.
even when no one's watching.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about a moral compass here or some kind of, state-driven laws. I mean, to be true to myself and what is important to me.
Yeah.
So I guess an example of that might be, I saw someone stealing some food in a supermarket the other day. What's integrity to me is to turn my head when that happens because someone's stealing food, and it's a corporation that is multi-million pound profits. So for me, even though there's a kind of a law-given compass that says that's wrong, not for me, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I'm not in a position to do that, but I probably would if I was. So that's for me. It's about living with what I believe to be right and being able to show up for that
Okay.
every time.
Yeah.
And the honesty, the falsehood between honesty and trustworthiness, because I think along the same lines as integrity, um, I am able to be honest
Yeah.
now with myself and with others.
Yeah.
Um, when I was drinking, it felt like, God, I was certainly wasn't honest with myself. You know, the biggest lie I was telling myself was, I want to drink. That was the biggest lie.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. So, in fact, let's talk about that then. So, we take those three core values. How did drinking allow you to stay true to those core values? And what did it mean to you? Or I suppose if you hadn't really thought about them before you stopped drinking, you didn't even realize you weren't living a life aligned to them. But what did it mean to you to when you were drinking? Were you able to stick to those core values? And if not, why not?
compassion, yes. Although I don't think I always acted in the most compassionate way.
What
On
about
reflection,
what about compassion to yourself while you're drinking?
absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that's the one that's the value I believe that I probably had an idea of throughout. The other two, honesty and integrity, no, they didn't even feature. I didn't even think they featured.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, Not to say that I thought I was particularly dishonest or or I particularly lacked integrity, but you know, I didn't. So I think, sorry, what's the question, Ellen?
How did they impact whether you were able to live
Yeah,
aligned to those core values?
sure. Um, drinking, drinking doesn't allow for honesty.
So you just touched on the like you weren't even really honest with yourself about the
Yeah,
relationship that you had with alcohol.
yeah, absolutely. No, it wasn't.
No.
I, I, I was tricked by it, and I was consumed and manipulated by it.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting one, the honesty. In the years of work that I've done with clients, talking about honesty, it tends to be one of the top core values, right? The people, in fact, yours are fairly. That's ideally everybody kind of wants to live by those three. Um, some might chop and change and come in, but honesty is one of those when I remember speaking, one of the clients was just the loveliest woman in her 70s who was like super kind, super, like really, really lovely. And she said, God, I used to like steal the glasses from the pub or steal the cutlery and steal things like that. And on a very, very small scale, this is a woman who would never, ever dream of stealing, right?
Yeah,
Ever.
yeah,
But given a few drinks, it was something that was kind of funny to her and to us. Like I've done exactly the same, right? I had a whole kitchen full of glasses and
yeah,
things like that from the pub. Um, but honesty can be taken right to when we are hiding our drinking because we don't want to
yeah,
upset other people, and so we're having a sneaky drink, or we're changing what we're drinking it out of, or we're sat, especially during COVID, drinking wine out of mugs and things like that, and all of a sudden we're being incredibly dishonest about our relationship with
yeah,
alcohol, thinking that we're protecting those around us, but all we're doing is feeding the addiction, right?
absolutely. And thinking that this isn't a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, all this other stuff, all this other shit going on in my life is not related to drinking.
Yeah.
Um, the hours, endless hours spent with people I have got absolutely no desire to be ever again
Yeah.
in a pub or at a party or around the kitchen dining table with with people who, at the time, I told myself and them I really enjoyed their company. I really liked them. You know, no interest at all
No.
in them at all. Um,
And being dishonest about the role that we play in our own suffering, right?
Absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
kind of the biggest thing, I think, is stepping into that victim mentality when we're drinking and not taking any responsibility for the role that we're playing in it. Um,
Yeah.
so tell me then, when you stepped into sobriety, how long before you'd given up alcohol did you start like looking at your core values? Can you remember?
I think it was probably about 6 months in.
Okay.
I think I started it much sooner, and I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing. So I put it down, and I was coming up. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look at it, but I was coming up with some like really grandiose things. And it's like, Sarah, come on, man, this isn't you,
Yeah, right. Like, and
right?
also
But
to
my
just,
ego is still so much so,
yeah,
and that is a really massive part of the journey. Is that, you know, just when you're drinking, when I was drinking, sorry, my ego was so engaged in what was going on, and and that really was kind of integral to my drinking character.
yeah,
Although I would never have admitted it at the time, but it's really, really linked, integral to that, the Sarah who drank. And I think it really wasn't probably 6 to 9 months where I had this kind of awakening of, you've got to let your ego go. You've got to let go of that. You've got to, you know, you've got to bear yourself only to myself, essentially. But I've really got to chip away at those things. Um, and I was still seeking validation, and I was still, I've talked quite a lot about the fact that I'm still going to the pub and all those things. Um, and those things are about trying to satisfy or gain a connection based on old ideas or based on things that I previously sought validation from.
yeah,
And so it really was about stripping away the kind of essence that kept me stuck or may have led me back to where I was. Because I was determined, I am determined, but I was so determined. Physically, I was so determined. There's no way I would have put a beer to my lips. There's just absolutely no way I would have done it. But that was as much of an ego thing as anything else.
yeah,
Look,
yeah,
look at how great I am. I'm not going to let this beat me,
yeah,
So, and I think it really, it came to the point where I had to accept that you're still playing this game. You're just playing it
yeah,
without drinking. Um, and there's a few things around that time. And I think about a year to 15 months was kind of the point where I shifted from, I'm not drinking, I don't drink, to I am sober.
yeah,
And that my mindset had to shift. And that was the thing that had to shift. Um, I had to kind of look at all that work I'd done and really re-engage my soul in what that was about.
yeah. So that's an interesting word, right? Soul,
Yeah,
because um, we talk kind of about spirituality in this. Oh, I work around these 6 pillars of well-being, and positive connection for me is like this higher. It's the last piece in the puzzle, and this is what the core values work for me really means. Um, we talk about spirituality, and a lot of people, when I mention spirituality, kind of go like, I'm not
I did.
religious, is normally the like, oh no, I don't believe, I don't have faith. I'm like, well, what would it mean to have faith in yourself? Like, is that, to me, is spirituality, like that I can trust. And you use the word soul, and I think that's why when I look at really, when I look at sobriety for people, removing alcohol is the first thing, but then it's a real holistic mind, body, soul, and this is that missing piece of, okay, what does our soul need? And it is to live aligned, because we can trust ourselves then. We can trust that our decisions not coming from ego based, like, as you said, which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
um, and we can trust that what we're each decision we make, whether it's tiny, right, whether it is over a conversation, whether it is bigger, whether it's about life decisions, if they are aligned with our values, then we're building that trust and that faith in ourselves. It doesn't necessarily have to be the higher power. Maybe we are the higher power. And every time we live aligned, we're just kind of reiterating that to ourselves.
Yeah.
So tell me what it means to you now then to live aligned to your core values.
It means I'm not able to take anything for granted, really, because what I have to do often is I may go to react, and I catch myself and I have to say, is that sober Sarah who is going to say that or do that?
Yeah.
Um, is that what is that really what you want to do? Is that really what you want to say? Is that really how you want to feel? Um, and that feelings one is difficult because, of course, feelings are feelings, right? We're not in control of
Yeah.
them. Um, but it's the feelings one is about, where am I going to allow this feeling to take me? Who is in control of this? My feeling or me?
Yeah.
And I have to, I have to sit back and say, right, drinking Sarah would have allowed this feeling to consume her, would have allowed it to overwhelm her, and would have allowed her mental health, emotional health to spiral. That's what would have happened.
Yeah.
And then you would have drunk to numb that feeling, but you would have spiraled still.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop the spiral, it just stops the feeling
Yeah.
the spiral. So now I have to say, right, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to take a proactive decision to stop that from happening. When I go and get a meal from Wetherspoons, and it's very easy to steal the tomato ketchup off the table,
Yeah.
and it's Heinz, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Unless I haven't got any at all in. So it's different, no. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I've been doing for years.
Yeah.
Do I actually still want to do that? Is that something I still want to do?
Yeah.
And it leads back to the power of the pause, right?
Yeah.
It leads back to that.
Every time before we react, before we respond, is this aligned with my
Yeah,
values? On that kind of note, there are times where, definitely in my sober journey, there have been decisions to be made that meant that I could not leave, I could not respond in a way that hit all my core values. Like, I was so torn by certain decisions. And I remember having a conversation with sober coach Mandy Manners, my pal. I remember at the kitchen table, and it, specifically over my husband, where compassion is really high, and but that kind of safety thing coming in. And I remember her words to me is, well, what lets you lose yourself the least? So anybody who is struggling with like making decisions based on their core values, because you feel like, you know, there is no way forward that hits all your core values and lets you live aligned. It's sitting and putting the power of the pause in, and really almost looking at the pros and cons, like what lets me lose myself the least here, and then staying very grounded in that you've made the best decision based on those values, and moving
Yeah.
forward with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that's quite difficult, isn't it, is that in sobriety, you just kind of mentioned it there, really, is that we often have our eyes opened to the people that we have been hanging around with actually don't share the same core values as we do. Or at least it's this discussion, not through any fault of their own, not through any judgment. It's just that our relationships a lot of the time have been based around drinking. We've never really thought about core values too much. But when we stop drinking and we suddenly become aware of them, as you say, it might be a year later, it might be 5 years later in our journey, but we can look around and suddenly go, ah. So our relationships shift based on that, don't they?
So much. So much. It's really, for me, the kind of, I feel like I've had a personality transplant sometimes. I mean, truly, yeah, it sounds so dramatic
Yeah.
and like foolish, really, I guess, but that really does feel like that. I thought I was an extrovert. I had all these ideas about who I was that just
Mm-hmm.
are not true. Um, they're just not true. And I spent a long time being that person.
Yeah.
I mean, 12 to 43, 4, however it was, I can't remember. And I haven't spent very long being this person. And
Who do you prefer?
it, oh, this person for sure. It,
Yeah, right.
it's weird because there's times when I feel like I miss it. I miss the fun. Now that's you know, of course that's all relative because when I look back on the times, I wasn't having fun. With retrospect, I know I wasn't having fun,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I now I lack the opportunity for abandon and that sense of freedom and the hedonism. I don't want to have that again, but I want to have the opportunity to have that again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's lots of elements of my personality that I still don't know as a sober person, but I know they're not the same as they were when I was drinking, but I don't know what they are yet.
No,
And it's exciting.
it is exciting, and you kind of, again, you touched on it there a second ago, is that when we believe we're an extrovert, right? And we give this air of confidence when we're drinking, but quite often when we remove the drink, we suddenly realize that we're not that extroverted person, that we aren't full of confidence like we think we are, and actually we don't even really realize it, but we were drinking to fit in that situation, or we were making the situation fit by drinking, like chicken and
Yeah,
eggs situation. But when we stop
looking for
drinking,
belonging.
yeah, we then suddenly belong to ourselves, and that's where the sense of belonging
Yeah,
is. And so all that fake confidence and that fake extrovert, don't know what the word is there, but that, you know, the
exhibitionism.
exhibitionism, yeah, it's removed, but it's replaced by something that is so grounded. And that's why I love doing this work, is because when I gave up alcohol, I felt like I stepped into my skin for the first time as an adult. Like I really felt comfortable and confident in who I was. I remember I used to ask like at least three people's opinion on my feelings and thoughts around something. Like I was getting a quote each time. I would be like, what do you think about this situation? Do you think I'm right in this? Should I feel like this? And as I've moved through sobriety, and it's taken some years, I don't need to check in with anybody else if I'm feeling the right way about things. I can say, I can identify by putting the power of the pause in, this is what happened, this is what I feel about it, and this is why I feel about it, because it's crossed some core value or it doesn't sit aligned to my core value. So again, my relationships have shifted because some people who were in my life before just don't fit those values that I find really important now. Nice versus kind is
Oh, absolutely.
one of the top things for me, right? As core values, I I am not a very nice person. I hope that I'm a kind person. Um, don't
Because
get me wrong.
nice is futile.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like
It's
sympathy, right?
yeah,
Nice
and
and sympathetic, or kind and empathetic.
yes, and leading with integrity, like kindness,
Absolutely.
clear and kind, and I can, yeah, I know that I'm going to say something and I'm going to follow through with what I say. And I'm going to do that in a kind way. And as I say, don't get me wrong, because I've done lots of things that I'm not proud of in sobriety. Just removing alcohol didn't suddenly make me a virtuous person. And especially a lot of that is around the reward pathway in my brain. So it's taken work and it's taken the power of the pause all the time to remind myself, oh, that doesn't feel right to me. If my body feels off, if I'm feeling anxious or stressed, that's my body giving me feedback that I am doing something that does not feel aligned to me.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really, really something that's important to, yeah, certainly for anxiety, for self confidence, for self esteem, and building that peace or removing that peace from the addiction. Um, it's an interesting thing. Lots of times when I ask people, like, what are your core values? Anybody that's interested in doing this work, you can go on my website and there's core values list that you can download, or you can just Google core values list and you can start looking through core values. And like you said, sometimes we have suddenly like, oh, this, like feelings of grandiose, like I'm going to be all of these things. But I would have a look what stands out to you and then narrow it down to three ideally, but maybe five, maybe 10 at a push, and then have a look. But if you're struggling with what that looks like, think about, what do I look for in other people? What values do I think are attractive in other people? Who do I look up to, and why do I look up to them? What is it? How do they live? Um, and lots of times also asking why your friends love you, why your family loves you, like what would they say that your core values are. What do you look for, Sarah, in other people? Now, if your top core values are those three, are they the same values that you look for in other people?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, what is someone without those things, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I identified like freedom as one of my top core values, um, which is interesting. If I could only choose three, yeah, it would be like kindness, compassion. The topic today is core values and living aligned with your core values in sobriety. So let us know what your core values are. But yeah, like kindness, compassion, for me, they're the kind of the same thing. Integrity, which again, honesty is kind of in there, and freedom. And a lot of that came from realizing that a lot of my relationships in sobriety were very much codependent, and that was something I was not willing to move forward with. No problem. And so I do always kind of check in, do I have freedom in this relationship? Do I have freedom in this job? Do I have freedom in this position? If not, then it probably is not aligned with who I want to be. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. What would you do you think your friends would say, that you live aligned to those core values now, and then that's what they find attractive about you?
Um. Yeah. Probably. I think they would.
Yeah.
I think they would. Um. But I never know how other people perceive me. So
No, and it's also none of our business, right? Like,
right, yeah, it's not, um, it, yeah. I'm not bothered. Then there was a time when that would really have interested me
yeah,
and my ego,
yeah, right.
and now I'm like, I'm not actually, I'm not in the slightest bit interested. Um, I think other people who know me, perhaps have some letting go of perception to do, um, based on what they knew, and it's very different,
Yeah,
a very different person.
yeah, and thank goodness for that. Like,
Thank
that's
goodness for that.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Uh, Lovely. So anyone that is looking to do the work around this, yeah, by all means, identify your core values. Do a little bit kind of journaling around it. Why are they important to you? Somebody else has said integrity. What do they mean? Introspection. Yeah. What does that mean to you? Journal around that idea. What do these things mean to me? So that you have a very clear picture on them. And then same things that we've talked about today. Did alcohol help me live aligned to those? And this is with zero judgment, right? Like, people do silly things when we're drinking because it is a
absolutely.
psychoactive agent. We have no control over what we do when we're drinking. That's why for me it's like, I do not drink because that first drink is a trigger into me acting like a dipshit, and I just like, I won't do it. Yeah, did drinking allow me to live aligned with those values? Does sobriety allow me that option to live aligned? And how, like, what would it mean to me to live aligned? How would I feel about myself if I can show up in a way that makes me feel really, really proud of myself? Some people don't like the word pride, but I think it's it's a confidence, right? Like, it's integrity and compassion for ourselves, knowing that, yeah, we show up for ourselves in a way that we're really happy with.
Yeah, it's that inner peace, the serenity.
Yeah, I really think it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I think it's that the icing on the cake, the cherry on top is living aligned. That's what that spirituality piece is. And in sobriety, we talk about the work. This is part of the work, for
Absolutely.
sure. And it's an
Yeah,
exciting part of the work.
yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful journey.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Okay, I think that's a really nice place to finish, actually. Thank you very much, Sarah. You got anything else that you would like to add?
Um, I don't think so.
No.
I had a conversation with someone last night. Said they want to stop drinking.
Oh, I love
I was
that.
like, just do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
Take a
look back.
break. Just, yeah. Anyone that is thinking about it, that is your sign to take a break and just see where it goes. But the butterfly effect of sobriety, right, is being able to have those conversations with other people, planting that seed. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. Okay, thank you very much, lady. I will hopefully see you next week. Anybody who's got any
Yep.
questions, needs any support, by all means, reach out to myself or Sarah, or you can check out the website sobrietysisterhood.com, where there is loads of free information too. Like, you don't have to join anything, just go have a look at the blogs, have a look at the download worksheets, all those kinds of things. There's loads of free resources, but by all means, reach out to myself or Sarah in the meantime. Otherwise, I will see you next week, hopefully.
See you later. Yeah,
Take care.
definitely. See you.
Bye.
Bye.